Two more times, and it's yours. Good morning and welcome to the October 26th regularly scheduled meeting of your Board of County Commissioners. It's a little after 9 a.m. and call the meeting to order. We start each meeting with a prayer and the pledge. Today the friends from 4-H will come forward and after the prayer and lead us in the pledge today. And this morning to lead us in the prayer we have Reverend Bearden. Pastor, if you would come on up from the Christ United Methodist Church of Milton. He'll lead us in the prayer this morning. Everyone please rise. Good morning. Hit that speak button there, it should come on. Perfect.
Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, you've told us repeatedly in your sacred scriptures that leaders make a difference in the lives of a community. I pray for these leaders. I ask that you give them a spirit of mercy and compassion, of wisdom and justice, and courage to do what is right. May your peace rest upon our county. In the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Would lead us in the pledge? Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. We're off and running. Next, we will have the approval of the minutes of the September 28th, 2017 special meeting and the October 12th, 2017 regular meeting. Have the minutes provided for you. If there are no changes or modifications to the minutes, Commissioner Parker, you're recognized. Okay. If there's no changes or modifications to the minutes, then I would move approval of those minutes without objection. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. We'll now move on to the approval of today's agenda. Let's start with my right. Commissioner Parker, any changes today?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Two add-ons per the request of the sheriff. If you could please make a spot for him to make a presentation to the board. And a second add-on, if there's any way maybe we could add it to, say, the end of an engineer's report, would just be a discussion of a Chipper Lane HMGP project, just to clear up some questions.
The regular agenda, we will add the sheriff ahead of judicial facilities, and we will have him lead off. So we'll put you in the first spot, Sheriff. Is that okay? So we'll kind of make that number one, and then judicial facilities can be 1A. And the Chipper Lane HMGP information only item?
May possibly be a brief board discussion, just trying to clarify some questions.
We're not looking to take any action on the item, on this proposed item today, since it was not on Monday's agenda. I just want to make sure we clarify before we add it on. This is information only, correct? Or is this something that
it's something we've already taken action on, and I think just one party, current property owner, has some questions to make sure of what we're doing to carry out that.
Board comfortable with adding it on? Okay, we'll add this on as number 2 to, you wanted engineer's report?
Please, you could put it at the end or wherever
Okay.
you see fit on the
Okay.
engineer's report.
Go into item number 2 on engineer's report. Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't have anything until yesterday, but I would like to add a conversation concerning FWC and Bears When I got home yesterday, my wife told me there was one in our garage that she's scared out of our dog food. And I've talked to another neighbor in our area half a mile away that one was huffing at him in a tree above them. And we keep hearing from FWC that it's our fault because we don't close our garbage cans. I think it's time for the state to take a little more action than that, so I'd like for us to discuss that further.
Okay, we'll put that right behind the meeting list. Item number 4 of admin will be, I'm assuming this is information only as well? Or,
It is, and I may want to ask that the board have the chairman consider a letter to them, but
okay,
we'll see what we come out with.
okay. I'll just put Bear Talk at number 4 under admin. Thank you, Vice Chairman Cole. Commissioner Salter?
No changes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the consent agenda, 5A, the Triumph letters of support, under the City of Gulf Breeze, we have the Eastgate and Town Center projects listed there. The other application would be for the Andrews Research and Education Foundation. We discussed that on Monday. That's the one they weren't sure if they were going to have the application, the pre-screening application ready by the 15th, but they think they will. So I would like for us to approve the letter for the Andrews Research and Education Foundation as well.
As a matter of protocol, do we need to move that to the regular agenda to formally amend that? Yeah,
I wouldn't
okay.
think
We'll
it'd
just-
be necessary, but you
It
can do.
won't take long,
as you
but we'll
will.
go ahead and just move that to the regular agenda.
Okay.
And we'll put that we'll put that as number 5, Triumph.
Thank you, Mr.
And for
Chairman.
our friends that are here, and if there's any folks here from Gulf Breeze this morning, I don't see any, I just didn't want them to wait around. I thought that that was something we had supported as well, so I don't see that being an issue. All right, so number 5, that'll be Triumph to add the Andrews project. Thank you, Commissioner Lynchard. County Administrator, County Attorney,
No additional changes.
No changes.
good, budget? No, good, welcome back, Dan. All right, so with that, we'd move approval of today's agenda. Hearing no objections, today's agenda is approved. And then we'd move on to proclamations. It's National 4-H Month. And I've asked Vice Chairman Cole if he would read the proclamation today. And if our friends from the 4-H group, if you'd like to come up to stand at the podium or the microphone there, it'd be great. Come on up here where you led the pledge from. Yeah, right there is great. Thanks for being here this morning. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege and honor this morning to read this proclamation. It says, whereas the 4-H motto, to make the best better, and whereas connecting youth and adults to work together through volunteer services can bridge differences that separate people, and whereas we, the American people, have a tradition of giving and sharing, and whereas 4-H youth, volunteers, and cooperative extension staff have joined to promote a week of National Volunteer Community Service, and whereas 4-H supports our military families and their children through the 4-H OMK, Operation Military Kids, and 4-H Military Partnership Programs, and whereas volunteer community service is an investment in the future we all must share. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Rosa County, Florida, do hereby proclaim October 1st through October 7th, 2017 as National 4-H Week, and urges the citizens of Santa Rosa County to connect with youth, friends, fellow employees and relatives, and with school, community, and civic groups to engage in projects benefiting their community. This has been passed and adopted by the County Board of Commissioners, 26th day of October 2017, and signed by our chairman. Congratulations.
Well, who's the leader of this group here today? Is there a spokesperson in the house? Now's your time if you wish to address the board and tell us about all the exciting things that are going on with your 4-H program. You're a superstar, by the way. You've done a great job with this
Thank
program,
you.
and
They are
it
fabulous
is
children.
great to see all the smiling faces here this morning.
Yes, I just mortified one of them by telling him it was neither one of our county council presidents could be with us this morning, and so that he's the vice president, and said, but it's okay. I didn't prepare.
Put you on the spot.
I didn't
I'm sorry.
prepare him for that. But yes, we have some of our county council officers with us today, and district officers and club officers that are with us, and we are just excited to be able to be here with y'all, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind getting your picture taken with a bunch of politicians, we'll come down. All right.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you for being here this morning. All right, we have a public hearing at 9:30 that we'll come back to, and next we have a presentation by Michael Burton of the Clerk of Courts. His chief deputy is here today to give us some good news. We always like checks. We got a nice check on Monday. What do we got?
Well, I get the honor of presenting to you today the return of our unspent revenues for fiscal year 2017. We're returning just short of $560,000. It's actually already in the bank, so I don't actually have a check. But I'm also giving you our formal request to have $127,950 of it returned as we presented in our budget presentation to cover the pay increases that were approved in July for our court salaries. We still keep having reductions in our budget on that side, so we're just asking for that money to cover those pay raises as well. So,
Thank you for the work that the clerk's office does, and that with the tax collector, even with that 100-some-odd thousand, that puts us close to $1 million, which that's better than finding a 5-spot in your jeans pocket, you know what I'm saying? So that's good stuff. That's consistent with the budget, right? So we don't anticipate any issues with that? Yeah.
okay.
Cool. Thank you very much. No, it's in the budget. I think we're good. Okay, now move on to approval of today's consent agenda. Move approval of today's consent agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, today's consent agenda is approved. Moving on to today's regular agenda, no economic development committee items today. And next we move on to the administrative committee, and we move to our presentation from the sheriff. We have our add-on. So good morning.
And for once, I get to come in front of you and give you some good news. So you remember before I said a conservative estimate would be $500,000 for what we would return. Well, as of Friday, we will be giving you a check of $1,118,000 and change. So I think we did a good job toward the end of the year trying to curb overtime and some other things to get that check to you. And I also have some good news. You remember I said we wanted to open the Work Release Center, and we would have a recurring budget of around $900,000 if we did that to get 64 beds. Randy Tift, my major in the jail, who couldn't be here today, his father passed away, so he's in South Florida, came up with an idea, and he went through DSU and measured it. That's the Direct Services Unit. So he can fit 64 beds in that place, DSU, and we wouldn't have any reoccurring cost. We'd have a first startup cost to buy the beds to put it in there of about probably $28,000 to $30,000. So that being said, we could get 64 beds, no reoccurring costs after we buy those beds, and still fit within the Florida model jail standards, which is, he shocked me by coming up with that. That's really going to save us a lot of money, and that's, like I said, 64 beds, which will put us probably, right now we're at 708, so 64 beds added on to 682, we would be in compliance as of today. So
That's a huge win, Sheriff, and can't thank you enough for continuing to look for ways to maximize what you're doing with the resources that you have and try to have that equate to not only keeping your officers safe, because you've definitely improved in that area of making sure that we're keeping our officers safe, but the public safe as well with the resources that you have. This is phenomenal news, and it comes at a great time, especially as we get ready to head into session, and we know that there's likely to be more unfunded mandates heading our way that are going to stretch our budget, make it even tighter. So I know I'm definitely comfortable with that. That's a huge win. I don't know what action this board needs to take, if any, other than to direct staff to follow up with that. And if there's going to be a budget amendment that would be at a subsequent set of meetings, we could get everything, taken care of between now and then and move forward with it. I see a lot of heads nodding up and down, so I think we're in good shape.
okay, and then one last thing. Armor Medical does the medical for our jail. And we have a contract that was signed by Wendell Hall. He entered into that contract a couple years ago. And part of that contract says that if we go above 625 inmates for a period of 90 days or more, they get to up their price. So, and they did that. They gave us a bill, which I'll be forwarding to Tony along with the armor contract to let him look at it. And if we go along with them and we continue with armor, that'll be $200,000 for this year, the total, which would mean if you gave that back to us as well, we would be basically giving you a check of $868,000.
So they're new incremental expenses of
Correct.
$200,000 over what we budgeted for this year.
Correct, because of the inmate staffing. But now what we've also done is I have 3 bids for medical and 1 more coming in at the end of next week. And we're going to examine all of those to see if we continue with armor. And if armor's not the best bang for the buck and we can get somebody else, we'll go into another contract. We just have to give, I believe it's 30 days notice on armor, and we can start another contract. So once that last bid comes in, we're going to sit down, and I would love to have Tony and Dan come in there, and we'd all look at all the bids, and if we can get more bang for our buck at a better price, we'll definitely do it, because inmate medical is the most expensive thing we do back there. And it's just, we're tasked with taking care of the inmates, and it's not going to go away, unfortunately. And as the population in the jail goes up, so does the cost for inmate medical.
So a worst-case scenario, if we stick with the current provider, is we're looking at around an additional $200,000
Right.
expense. So if we renegotiate, that may get better
Correct.
throughout the year. Okay.
Correct.
I don't guess that requires any board action. I'm sure you'll be working with staff on that.
And also, we'll get, you'll get an email this afternoon with a copy of the contract and also armor contract, and also the bill they sent us for the extra $200,000. We'll get that to you this afternoon.
Okay. Any, Vice Chairman Cole?
Thank you. Just a quick comment. Sheriff, it's enjoyable. I know sometimes it's hard, the news we have to share back and forth. But when I watch the news and see what's happening in our neighboring county, you make it very enjoyable for us to work with. I'm glad you got the job and that we're on this side of the pond from all that, so. And I don't say that to rub their nose in it, I say that to show you my appreciation of how we could work together.
Well, thank you, and it goes both ways.
Thank you. I know
Thank
we
you.
got some challenges coming up in the next year or two, but, you know, I think that we keep the dialogue going and we keep the communication going like we've been doing, we're going to be just fine.
Yes, sir.
So thank you very much, y'all, for what you do.
Thank you.
Well, that is a very nice development. Now moving on to the always popular judicial facilities conversation today. Which direction do we want to go in here? Commissioner Parker, you want to take the ball and run with this? Stay hot?
I actually told Tony I'd love to just be quiet and see if somebody else wanted to make a motion, to tell you the truth, but,
We can open it up for the will of the board.
you know, I think, I was looking at the backup there that's provided, with the draft timeline, I guess obviously we'll have the November meeting to make a decision on what exactly we want to move forward. Tony, if you will, just kind of bring me in for a landing on, based on our discussion Monday, is today's action that we're informing the board to go ahead and solidify that timeline and move forward with the actions required.
The
to
board
get
had
to that
asked for
state.
sort of a reverse timeline where it kind of put us all on a glide path where we knew where we were headed, so we did that. And what we actually ended up doing was provide you kind of what is option A and option B, which really is option A. After talking with, I did speak with HOK this week after Monday's meeting, just to get some idea of, and I've spoken with others as well, to get some idea of what could get accomplished between, let's just say, if we did an RFQ, if we asked for some additional work to be done to get us closer to a document. There's no way to get toward even a construction type document between the time we have and the, prior to you considering all those things and determining a referendum language. So my recommendation is that we just determine that option A would be what we would be looking to do, which would be to update the cost for the jail, the addition of the jail, so that you'd have an updated probable cost, and the same for the judicial facility. I believe there is a relatively good probability that both of the consultants that worked on these projects, it was a different consultant that worked on the jail, and then HOK, and speaking with them, that they may offer to provide an updated cost analysis based on today's dollars of the conceptual design, which would give you a per square foot cost, would give you the opportunity out in the spring to evaluate those and determine the programming or the size, who would be in there based on that if you wanted to try to target a dollar amount. So I don't believe we're going to gain a lot by doing an RFQ, getting a consultant to review these things. I just don't think we're going to get a document that's going to take us a lot further down the trail prior to having to make a decision about referendum language. I think what we could do, again, without being, I know I'm being redundant in what I say here, but I think just updating what we have in terms of cost estimates for the jail and for the courthouse would be our, in my opinion, our best course of action, giving us information, the board information, to then make a decision relative to referendum language.
Thank you, Tony. Mr. Chairman, if it would please the board, and obviously welcome further suggestions from fellow board members, but I would be satisfied with directing staff to move forward as necessary with the things Tony mentioned, such as the updated cost estimates, start gathering information to deal with other things we've discussed, such as what offices could be and possibly consolidated in costs that we could benefit from not leasing other space and other things, just to start the information gathering process to bring back to the board, keep this topic at the front of the spear, so to speak, with us basically giving staff the directive that we are moving this forward in the sense of having approved ballot language in June or before, prior to that deadline, to have it as a referendum on the August 28th ballot. And so I can sort of craft that in a motion if I need to restate it, but that would be my suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Parker. Open it up for any other comments from the board. Vice Chairman Cole, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to have the board's feel on two items. One's the probation office and one is the public defender's office. I would like to see those included in this, where those two buildings could be, they're definitely in need of an upgrade, and get the public defender out of the Fisher Hamilton building, put it on the market at some point, but, and I guess it'd be questionable as to whether we'd also look at the state attorney's office in that, and then freeing up that space for future growth of county needs, or whatever we might have in the future. But I think if we're going to approach this, we need to be inclusive of the needs. And even if we're renting the archives building, it may cost a little more initially, but we need to. I think this needs to be an inclusive project. So.
And definitely at $26,000 a year in cost for the storage of records now, it definitely makes sense to eliminate that and include it. So if I'm hearing you correctly, Vice Chairman Cole, you're suggesting that we approach this as creating a complete judicial center where we are going to include all judicial services within this location, correct? We're going to consolidate everything. That's definitely something that I would think would make sense. Fellow commissioners, is that something that we agree with, that as far as it goes with what services would be provided from this proposed building, that it would be a true judicial services consolidated effort? Commissioner Salter, you recognize?
Mr. Chairman, I concur, and I would hope as we move forward, we'll embrace the users of this facility, the clerk's office, the sheriff's office, and get their input, because they know more about what they need than what I do. So I know we'll do that, but I encourage us to do it better in the future. But I concur with the proposal.
Definitely want to make sure that we're engaging them. Nobody has dealt with this probably more than yourself, sir. They have definitely, through our consultant HOK, have at each phase, these stakeholders have been, they've met and they've given what their programming needs would be and the space requirements that they would need through all of the iterations of this. And I agree with you, we need to make sure that they're consulted again. But I'm hopeful that there hasn't been a lot of changes from the programming and design that they have approved as early as less than 2 years ago. I would just make a request to all the stakeholders, if you're listening, that for this to have any opportunity for success, we need to make sure that the building that we're going to propose to the taxpayers of Santa Rosa County that we would like to construct is a building that is going to provide only the space needed to conduct the judicial services that we need for the next 25 years. It won't be something that we need to have a bunch of extra space programmed into, and if you can make do with an office that's 10 by 15, then don't request an office that's 10 by 20, that type of thing. Let's make sure that we're being very wise with what the recommendations are from each respective department, and I'm sure that folks will. Any other members of the board wish to comment on this matter? We know that we want it to be a true judicial center. I guess we have 3 votes for that, so we know what services would be provided. I'm a little concerned with, I voiced my concerns with HOK in that they could be a albatross as it relates to moving forward with this project. And so I saw the emails about HOK would possibly be willing to provide updated cost estimates at no cost to the county. My concern would be, or my question would be, is there any, do we believe that at any point along the way that HOK would be submitting invoices for reimbursement to the county for this project?
We would not, if that be the case, then we'll be coming back to you about a task order. In other words, I don't know anything definitive today. They will be in town, and they will make themselves available. I think they have good information they can share with us about some national trends that they've been working on in other states. And irregardless of what we do in the long term relative to the final construction documents, I think there's value in continuing to, they certainly are, they realize that they've obtained a lot of work from this project and that they want to be a good partner in that. I think that we should take advantage of, if they offer, and we get that solidified, if they offer to update the construction cost at no cost, then I would suggest that we take advantage of that.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think we have all the information that they were, that were their deliverables in the past, going back quite a few years. So the information that they've provided, we have at our disposal that we can use moving forward, or if another consultant was solicited, they would have at their disposal. So I don't think we're necessarily reinventing the wheel. I guess my question would be, if we're going to use them, wouldn't we have to go out for a competitive bid process? Because what they were hired to do previously, I believe they have met the obligations of what the board way back in the day hired them to do. So their work is now complete, and this is a new project. So I think we've got some pretty talented local folks as well that they should have the opportunity to bid on this project if we're going to need a new consultant to do design work and that type of thing. Certainly if we're going to go with the design that HOK delivered, then we've got what we need to move forward. We just put that footprint on the existing piece of property, and we can have an engineer put together a site plan based on the current footprint that we have now, if that's what we want to do.
Certainly it won't be just a site plan, it would be the construction documents. What you have now is the conceptual programming information. So there's a lot of work that goes between that and a set of construction documents that puts light plugs where they need to be and lights and plumbing fixtures and all those things that requires a significant amount of work.
Have we ever had a construction document before we've gone to referendum before?
I do not believe so, but I'm not.
So we don't need to have a.
That's what my point is, we don't need to have the construction document to get to the next, the pre-referendum part. And so the decision about who might do the final piece of this puzzle does not have to be accomplished pre-referendum.
Right. Kind of making the point for me is that if we already have the information from HOK, if we're going to go with a program that has a complete judicial services delivery, then we can have an engineer put that program that we already have, either the 146,000 or 135,000 square foot building, because if we're going to put all judicial services in there, that's going to be the range of square footage. We've done this enough time to know that it's going to be between 130,000 and 146. So I don't know that I don't want to spend extra money. I understand if HOK is already there and they're teed up that we can consider using them. I just feel as though they've already done the work, and now this would be a new project. And so I don't want them to automatically get this work. If they're going to do something for us for free, that's a different ballgame. But if they're looking to be reimbursed for this, and this is a way to start participating in the project, and then that automatically goes into them, doing additional stuff that would then be invoiced, that's definitely not something I'm comfortable with, and I would want to have a conversation about.
Well, you're certainly not taking any action today on this, and any action related to whether it's free or otherwise, I would anticipate we would bring that back to you, because they would obviously provide us something in writing if they're going to do a cost estimate update. And so I don't, again, you're not being asked to make any decisions on that today.
Okay, I'll come back to my other question. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Through the chair to Mr. Gamillion, did I also hear you say that the company that did the pods at the sheriff's office was offering the same thing?
Dan spoke with them, but yes, we have a meeting scheduled with them next Friday morning. So
Well, I think as long as both groups realize that we appreciate their input and their cost assessment, but also indicate to them that this in no way locks you in, then I don't see a
And that's-
problem. I
and
mean, if anybody out there is listening as a consultant wants to say, well, hey, I'll give you a free cost estimate too, well, fine, we'll take it.
I shared that in my discussion with HOK this
Sure.
week. But again, I think that, we are at that point where we are, and it's,
Well, we need-
board will make a decision about a consultant that will provide a final document.
Well, we need that, to me, to be able to all be on the same page when we're talking to the public about, okay, the judicial facility is going to cost this, pods would cost this, it would be a total of this, equate that into the sales tax expected revenue, and let the folks know exact figures that we're working with, rather than just shooting from the hip on this. So.
I think what we anticipate, and again, the timeline kind of lays it out, what we anticipate is having you a cost estimate for, let's just say, for instance, the jail, and the board can have a discussion in the spring that is related to, do we build just the ground floor piece? Do we add the full developed piece that can go up? Do we do all that at one time? The cost estimates will help you decide that. As well as the courthouse cost estimates will help you decide if you want to put all the program information, all the programmed pieces into the facility, similar to what was the initial discussion, rather than pull some of it back out of there.
Okay. Another quick question about option B. I'm just curious, if we know that we're going to need a master site plan, following the previous recommendations of, we have preliminary design, then we do project cost estimates, and we do public meetings and presentations, and that leads into the creating of the referendum language and, kind of moving forward. If we know that we're going to need a master site plan, or if we're going to need some design so we can get to cost estimates, why, it looks here like we have more than enough time before the June referendum. Why would we not go ahead and move forward with an RFQ to select a consultant? Certainly HOK can bid on that just like anybody else can, but if we go out for RFQ in November, we have the notice of it throughout the month of December. We have a vendor selected in January. That still leaves us February, March, April, and May to develop the preliminary design and site plan and cost estimates. That's 4 months, and that would still leave us time to craft the referendum language during the month of May using those cost estimates that have been provided. And I'm trying to make sure that if it's going to be the will of the board to move forward with a request for a referendum, that we have a design with specific cost estimates and what services are going to be provided.
All I can tell you is since I've investigated it since Monday, I came to the conclusion that we would not gain the type of information that would really give us a document to get us a lot further along than we are now in that, let's just say, a 3-month time frame. If you pick up a new firm, for instance, or HOK, to do the next level, which they would call the next level, I believe they call schematic. There's several pieces of this design work. It would not really give you a lot more information. The programming you're going to deal with is going to be more of a per square foot cost.
And that's not what I'm suggesting, so I apologize if I'm not getting across what I'm looking at here. We have a piece of property that has been acquired now that we have to have some kind of site plan done that would show where a judicial center is going to go on that property and how it's going to be configured. So I believe somebody, either in-house or otherwise, is going to have to provide that site plan. Not necessarily where the electrical outlets are going to go, but here's the footprint of the building, entrance, exit points, this is what it's going to look like, this is where it's going to go, and here's a probable cost estimate. Somebody has to do that. So I'm not suggesting that we need to take it to the next step. I'm basically suggesting that exactly what we had before we went to referendum in the city of Milton, that we would have the similar information before we go to referendum for this property off of Avalon. And if we're going to need that, which I believe we would, then don't we need to go out for an RFQ to select a company to do that? I mean, what am I missing here?
Well,
Because if we're not going to select another company, then aren't we saying that we're going to use HOK to do this?
I'm assuming we're going to select a company that's going to do the design plans for the courthouse. They would do the site and the building. And you would do that at one time. That would be my assumption.
Commissioner Lynchard?
I would support option A. It gets us from here to there with the least cost possible. If we can get the information that we need to move forward without any additional expenses, then that's fantastic, because we're into it for hundreds of thousands of dollars through the years right now. In terms of an RFQ for a site design or what have you, I don't see any need for that until we know if it's going to be funded or not. And that could be something that we can do in-house, a preliminary site plan, just an idea of where the building could go. I mean, there's, what, how many acres? 19 acres. So there's certainly enough room there to site that building. And we'll know, the important thing is the building, not how it's laid out on the property at this point. So I would support option A. That is the most straightforward way to get there in my mind.
So the option A is basically showing that we're going to update the cost estimates, and I'm assuming we're updating the cost estimates off the footprint of what we had
It's taking the
before?
cost estimate they gave us before and just bringing it forward to today's dollars. From
Correct.
2 years ago.
And they're going to plug it into the site that we now have. They're going to do this free of charge, where they're going to take the footprint and the program design that they had at the city of Milton, and they're going to take the 130,000 square foot version of that, and they're going to put it on this 19-acre parcel and tell us what the updated cost estimates are going to be?
First of all, I don't know exactly what they are going to do. Absolute, because we don't have any kind of agreement for anything at this point. But if you recall, when they did the cost estimate for the city of Milton, they broke out the foundation piece as an extra. We had asked that we know how much is this and how much is, so in general, if you're talking, what they did with the city of Milton, they broke out the additional foundational requirements for that site. So the building cost, again, is what you're really looking at as your kind of driver. And you're really looking at in general, a per square foot construction cost for that. Now, so we'll have to discuss with them further, them or someone, any kind of foundational question mark. We've done the initial geotechnical work on that site prior to contracting for the property. We wouldn't anticipate any sort of exceptional foundational needs or anything of that nature.
Other than turn lane access into the property and things like that. I'm not trying to be difficult here, guys. I really am asking because I don't understand. It seems as though if we're going this route, option A, that we're agreeing to let HOK provide these cost estimates. If they're going to do it for free and update the cost estimates for free, okay, as long as there's no understanding that they're guaranteed future work or anything like that. If we know that we have to have a consultant to deliver more detail before we go to referendum, my point is, let's go ahead and do that now because we know we're going to need it. If we think that we're going to be able to go to referendum with just having updated cost estimates but not having a site plan similar to what we had with the city of Milton, do you think we'd be successful when we go to the voters and we don't know, more detail? I mean, we can have any number of people give us updated cost estimates, can't we? We don't even have to go to HOK for that.
No, we don't, but somebody's going to charge for it. HOK, if they've done all of this work through the years, they've been compensated for that work. If they're willing to bring that forward, why not take them up on it? It doesn't guarantee that they're going to get the contract going forward. It doesn't obligate us to anything. If they're willing to do that,
Maybe a better
why would we
question-
not accept that?
I'm with you. Maybe a better question would be, are they offering to provide the same amount of information that they provided before that we used to go to referendum? You know what I'm saying? Is it
I
going to
don't
be
know that they're offering anything at this point. I mean, staff's just
Yeah,
entering
we've
into
had a
the
phone
discussion.
conversation at this point, and they're supposed to be in town November the 1st to have a further discussion about what they would be willing to do for us.
Okay.
So,
I'm
I
not
would
sure.
anticipate we would bring back at the November meeting an update on that. If that's going to require something that's additional, option A or B, then we'll bring that back. That's either going to be, we need to do an RFQ, or we need to, we need to determine if we want to accept an offer of some level of work.
Okay. Like I said, I'm absolutely comfortable with getting them to update this for free. I just don't have enough detail to know what exactly is that going to look like. And I guess you're telling me that between now and November, you're going to give me a greater level of detail of what exactly HOK is willing to provide for free.
And they will give you that as well if you desire to meet with them. They will,
I definitely want to meet with them.
yeah. So they will be here on November the 1st, and will make themselves available for the commission to
Yep.
meet.
I want to echo the comments that I've made publicly to them, looking at them across the table. I have not brought my concerns forward that I feel are significant, that definitely impacted the last vote and the last decision, and I definitely look forward to bringing those to them and seeing what their answer is on that. As far as this goes, I guess we'll just wait and see what they're going to bring to us. I hope that that doesn't then lose us a month and not make it possible for us to then get an RFQ done if we need one.
Well, there's one thing, I think, even if you don't do anything with HOK, I think as long as we just stay with an updated cost estimate, we will have time to have someone else review the prior information and update those construction costs. These firms typically are hiring a second-level firm that is in the construction business to update these costs for them.
Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if it gives you a little peace of mind, but I also had a representative from Mott McDonald, formerly Hatch Mott McDonald, that had done work in partnership with HOK on this as well, contacted me earlier this week and basically said the same sentiments that I believe you're saying HOK shared, that, hey, we've basically done the encyclopedia of work required. Once you get this site, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it would, look at what was already provided. Should be pretty easy to get us a range of costs, because even the cost estimate is going to be, in essence, that an estimate or range would be no different than any other commercial building once you identify what it's going to be. And I'm sure even staff probably on their own somewhat is going to look at even similar facilities that have been built within the last couple of years to kind of give us a scope around the southeast if we've got a few that we could garner information from, and I think we'll be good. So I don't know if I need to make a formal motion again, or are we all just kind of conceding that staff has clear direction.
I think that's what I'm hearing, is that they're going to come back to us at the next set of meetings with whatever HOK is willing to give us for free, even though we don't know what that is right now.
And possibly the other, designer for the jail, the other firm.
Yeah, to this point, we've talked a lot about the judicial center. Is there any, I guess the same thing, you're saying the same thing is going to be provided by the other company as it relates to the jail?
Yes, sir. I talked to them just the other day, and they've agreed to come here from Tallahassee to meet with us. They did the design and the construction plans for the expansion 10 years ago at the jail, to meet with the sheriff, to meet with the warden, Major Tift, and Tony and I, and then provide us updated cost estimates to do the same thing that was built in 2007 in today's dollars, and then also if we needed to expand upward and build vertically on the jail, what those costs would be.
Does this in any way disqualify either of these firms if they come over and talk to us now and work with us now on stuff, if we're then going to go out for a bid and they've helped create pricing and cost projections for it?
It doesn't disqualify.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of comments. I think a lot of our conversation today is anticipation of not knowing what HOK is going to do, so let's have that first meeting with them, then we'll have a better idea what they're going to offer. I agree with Commissioner Lynchard. I think we should go ahead and move forward with the option A, which includes consultants work on updating cost estimates and all the things that we're looking for. So let's have the first meeting to see if there's going to be a second meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is storm debris conversation. Open it up for the will of the board. Sorry. Mr. Cooey, go right ahead.
Thank you, Jerry. Cooey, 6049 Arnie's Way. There's been a commonality in the last 17 years, and it's HOK. And I'll be a historian this morning about HOK. We've spent about $1.2 million with them. And one other thing that really troubled me about the last time they were here, which the very generous citizens of Santa Rosa County paid $30,000 for their visit, a question was asked of them: have you discussed with all the partners what their needs might be And their response was they hadn't spoke with the state attorney or the public defender's office. I know this because I was standing in the meeting while it occurred. I offered my services to call the public defender since he's a friend of mine. I have some real problems with how they've done their business. Now, they really love us because they get a lot of money for drawing pictures. I would also like to point out to you at that meeting which I'm speaking about is one of the plans that they put up on the beautiful board that had nice colorings and a beautiful conceptual plan was a 5-story courthouse. Not one person in this room and not one person in this county has ever asked for a 5-story courthouse. I just have some real problems with how they have handled their things. Of course, that's my opinion. Let's talk about the property you guys bought. I hadn't had an opportunity to speak about that, but since we're on that topic of discussion, I have a real problem with how that was handled. On Monday, I was at the meeting on Monday where it was discussed. 5 RFPs came forward. 2 was eliminated with very little discussion. I was a little uncomfortable with the small amount of discussion. It eliminated 2 of them. And the board fully agreed that staff was going to look at the 3 that was left, and that on the following Thursday there would be an engaging conversation of the information that staff had gathered and consideration was be made. And what happened on Thursday was a pretty quick motion to purchase. And I say this just as a placeholder. I don't know that you did justice to the citizens of Santa Rosa County, and I will repeat something that Commissioner Lynchard said. Just 2 years ago, the property on Avalon was ranked 4th, and all of a sudden it became 1st with no discussion. I mean, really, in all fairness to the taxpayers of Santa Rosa County, why did 3 of you vote for that piece of property? Because there was very little evidence given as to why it was the right thing to do, the best thing to do, or the best price. Just my 2 cents worth. I think you've probably hurt yourself in the argument overall. And I will say this: I think you're very disrespectful to 2 of your commissioners, that being Commissioner Rob Williamson and Commissioner Lane Lynchard. You could have at least humored them and had a little more of a discussion before you had to vote. One additional item regarding all this: the last meeting that I came to, I discussed the rules of engagement, and I left out something. The rules of engagement are the county cannot extend any money or any help on a ballot matter because state statute says it is about the people. One organization I left out, and so the citizens will know what happened on the last tax event that you guys tried to pass. The League of Counties got involved. I saw the email where they had given you your scripts on how you should try to convince us for you to get more of our money. I'm going to have to add the League of Counties to the list of what I believe is prohibited help, because we, the taxpayers from Santa Rosa County alone, give them $30,000 a year. That is using a resource that the taxpayers pay for. And I just want that on the record, and I will be looking at communications from time to time to make sure the League of Counties is not assisting, because they most assuredly have a vested interest, and they're being paid by the taxpayers. They don't do their work for free, and I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that they should also not be allowed to assist in this because we, the taxpayers, are paying for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. What's that? Oh, yes, thank you. We had a public hearing scheduled at 9:30. Thanks for the reminder. And we will go open up the public hearing now for a proposed vacation of a portion of Ruth Court as requested by Stanley and Patricia LeSueur. I'll turn this over to the county attorney.
You have your the documentation and the agenda. The property is in the Avalon Beach subdivision. The Public Works doesn't have any concern with the vacation.
Had a question. As you look at the way it sets up, the owner of, I guess that's lot number 3 there. I think maybe that's lot number 3. I could be wrong, but as it sets up, you have Ruth Court, and you have in red the area that would be vacated. And I know the petitioner owns in blue all the way to the water. And then there's the lot immediately adjacent to the lot in blue, and it's going to take a little bit of the road frontage from that property owner. I'm just curious, has that property owner been notified, and have we heard anything from
The
that property owner?
half that's adjacent to his property would vest in him. The half of the vacated portion that's
Yep.
adjacent to that lot owner would vest in that lot owner. So he'd receive half of the vacated property, his half.
Okay, so Done deal. I just didn't see where that was designated. I thought the petitioner
That's
was
by
getting
operation-
all of that.
No, it's by operational law. It goes, if the county vacates the property, it goes one half to each of the adjacent property owners.
Okay. That was the only question I had, and they have been notified?
Yes.
Donor? Okay. We have no objection. County staff is good to go with it. Any members of the public wish to address the board on this matter? If not, we're prepared to move for approval. Okay, at this time, I would close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion from the district commissioner on the vacation of this item.
Thank you. And I believe Mr. and Ms. LeSueur are here today. Thank you for coming. I would make I'd make a motion that we approve this vacation as laid out forward in the backup material. Without objection?
Okay, hearing no objection, the proposed vacation request has been approved. Thank you. And thank you to my fellow commissioners for the reminder. Back on to the regular agenda now, and we're on to storm. Mr. Cooey, you recognize?
I'm sorry, one more thing. On the timing of the potential tax initiative, seemed like you jumped pretty quick to having it in the primary election. Is that how I understand? You've picked August?
The board's discussion last time was that that would be, I think that's the initial goal, would be to put forward a referendum at the August primary. So we haven't voted, I haven't taken any action on that yet, I don't believe, is that, okay, but that's, I guess that's the way the ship's heading.
Okay, as a matter of looking at historical elections, we know that more people vote in a general election than they do in a primary election. And I would encourage the board to think about that. And for two reasons. In Santa Rosa County, typically, most of our ballot is taken care of in August because it's usually Republicans running against Republicans. So in a non-presidential year, where you don't have a lot of other things clogging the ballot, the general election would be a better place, as far as I'm concerned, to have that. I think it'll be open to more people will be paying attention, and I think you're probably going to wind up with less items on the ballot in the general election than you will in the primary election. So
It is a valid consideration, Mr. Cooey. I think the one reason why the board was gravitating toward the August primary is because if the local option sales tax were to be approved in August, it would be ahead of the fiscal year, so you would begin collecting proceeds in January of, I guess it'd be 19. If you waited until the general election in November, even if it was approved, I do not believe that you'd be able to begin taking collections, Mr. Cooey, until January of 2020, or it'd definitely be the next fiscal year.
Actually, that's not correct. You have to give notice to the Department of Revenue if you're going to have a November or a referendum after October 1st. You have to give them prior notice. But if you do that, you have to, then they can start collecting in January of the next year.
Has that always been the case, or is that
Yes.
something? Okay.
So that
I'm a
clears your
senior member, and
concerns.
I had this out-of-body experience where I thought I'd
Okay.
asked that in the past and got a different answer, but.
All right, I just want to put that there. I think in all fairness for the population of Santa Rosa County, the general election is a fairer place to put it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think the issue in the past was that we hadn't decided to do the referendum in time to give them the prior notice, which was the reason for the having to wait until the next fiscal year, or
What was
next
that?
calendar year. We had not decided, the board had not decided to have the referendum in time to give the Department of Revenue the advance notice that's required in order to be able to pick it up.
Just
in
so
January.
my own edification, what is the advance notice
I
that's
think it's
required?
60 days prior to October.
So it'd be September, is it 60 days from October, the beginning of the fiscal year?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Learn something new every day. All right, I believe that we are now on to storm debris. Open it up for board discussion, or Tony?
The board directed to put this back on regular agenda. I don't know that there was a conclusive discussion there. So we just followed the board direction and added it back on the regular agenda.
And I had a little bit more opportunity to dig into this a little bit, and I completely can empathize and understand with the request of some homeowners to get debris picked up. I just want to reiterate that I think it sets a interesting precedent, and that it is not just waterfront properties that would be impacted here. We had some homes in Navarre and Gulf Breeze that were affected as recent as a week ago, that I'm wondering what we're supposed to, by just storm, like a severe thunderstorm type event, I'm wondering what we're supposed to tell folks if, as I said, maybe you don't live on the water, maybe you live somewhere else in the county, and we had a storm come through here that we're not going to get any grant funding for, and you have damage and you bring your debris to the curb. Are you then going to be calling the county and expecting that to be picked up, just like we've done here? So I just think that needs to be fully considered. To me, unless somebody can help me get there on this significant policy change, I don't know that I'm going to have a difficult time trying to find a way to support it. Commissioner Lynchard?
Mr. Chairman, I think a distinction is that with for example, down on Soundside, the property owners there, the docks, the pier material that was either washed up into their yards or deposited on the shore was not generated on their property.
Might not have been theirs.
Right,
Okay.
it's coming from piers up and down Soundside. So they can either go to the effort and expense of pulling it out of the water, pulling it out of their yard and stacking it by the road, or they can push it back out into the water where it becomes a hazard. Somebody has to deal with it. If it didn't come from their property, and it was deposited along the shore, they're doing a service by pulling it out of the water, pulling it off the shoreline, and putting it by the road or in the county easement. That's I think an important distinction between inland damage, where typically the debris is going to be generated by your property. The debris is going to come from the property where it's deposited. On the property along the sound and the bay, that's not necessarily the case. The piers are going to break up, and they're going to, the tidal wash is going to carry them to adjacent properties or half a mile down the coast. So I think that's an important distinction.
Do you think that the homeowner, that maybe a way to protect us a little bit from a policy standpoint would be to offer some kind of discount or waive the tipping fee for them to get it to the landfill, or that if our provider that we have a contract with, Waste Management or whatever, that we would have them do it and we would provide some type of discount, something, or that we should that's just something that we're going to trust that that's not their debris and that it came over from somewhere else, and staff will be able to differentiate if this was their dock material or somebody else's dock material, and we just haul it off?
Well, no, I don't know that we need to spend a tremendous amount of time and effort trying to figure out what a policy forevermore. Just let's deal with this. We have a few areas where there's dock debris that we need to deal with. The pile that was down on Soundside Drive in the county easement, that was a tremendous pile of debris. Well, all of the neighbors up and down there have come and they've taken the salvageable lumber out of there to rebuild their docks. So there's a pickup truck full of material that's still there, and hopefully some more of that will go away. But what we don't want to do is have a code violation issued because there's a pile of debris there. and penalize them for pulling that stuff out of the water, pulling it out of their yards and centralizing the disposal. In terms of picking the debris up, give it a few weeks, people are going to get the salvageable lumber out of there. Whatever they can reuse, they're going to get out of, and then hopefully the piles will be small enough to deal with. And
Is the situation
I
there
wouldn't
the same
suspect
as
it would be a
is?
tremendous amount of money if we got, hire somebody with a Bobcat with a set of grapple hooks and a debris trailer to pick it up, or get Public Works to do that in-house. I know they're putting more on Public Works. Stephen doesn't have enough to do already, but it's a service that I think we need to provide.
Okay.
Chairman.
As long as staff has clear direction on this following this meeting and whatever decision is ultimately made by the board, to where if it's a vendor or if it's county staff, they're going to know what's permissible for them to pick up and what isn't. And so I think that we need to make sure that our county administrator, that you're fine with that, you have some kind of, I'd like to think that common sense would prevail and that, everybody would do the right thing, but some folks may try to take advantage of that and use this as an opportunity to get some things cleaned up. I just think it's interesting how we got here, and that this is something that we've never done, and yet it's being discussed so matter-of-factly, like this is just a basic service that we should provide. I don't see it that way, so I must be missing something. But does staff have clear direction on this moving forward?
I'm not sure we're clear, but one thing I think I would, and I'll let Stephen chime in, but, I think what we would need to do within the next, prior to November, and I know we want to go ahead and get this wrapped up, but prior to our November meeting, we could, what you could direct staff to do would be to evaluate any debris that has been placed in our right-of-way. We've got the known calls that we've received, so that's a limited area. So we could evaluate those known areas and determine if you wanted to direct staff to determine if that's something that Public Works can handle. If it's very limited, we could just handle that. If it becomes necessary for us to hire a contractor, we could report back to you on the November meeting of the necessity for that.
And if we're going to pick it up, we can go ahead. We're going to pick it up, we can go ahead and pick it up. Like I said, if common sense will prevail, and I'll just hope that this is a one-off and that we won't, the next time we have a storm that's not protected federally, we won't be having this conversation. And if that's the case, then I apologize for delaying the meeting and asking this many questions. I just, there wasn't any backup provided on Monday. I thought we were talking about Bayside, and then we ended up adding Soundside. And so in the research that I've done between now and here, I don't quite understand why things have changed to the point where we would pick this up now. But if that's the direction the board wants to go in, I'll certainly support it. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully there won't be a next time where there's anything for folks to clean up. Vice Chairman Cole and then Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we ought to give Public Works and the county administrator the latitude to handle this on a one-time basis, put it on record that this is not a policy change, it's a one-time basis. And if it happens again in 6 months or 6 weeks or 6 years, the board at that time deals with it as, instead of making it a policy. This is just, this is what we're up here for. We're to help and protect our citizens, and this is how we can do this. And I think, again, our administrator and our Public Works Department, whether they can do it in-house or if they got to go out to bid, I don't want to hear about it again. To give them the latitude to do it, get it done. Next time it happens, we'll deal with it. No policy change.
Commissioner Parker.
Thank you for the support. Thank you for commissioners and staff for allowing me to put this on the agenda and bring it forward so that everybody is clear. I'll go ahead and make a motion. I'll make the motion without objection that staff, i.e. Tony and whoever under him he deems necessary, will go ahead and take the record that was provided to us via email of the folks that have called in with storm debris and go ahead and take care of it. And that's it.
Mr. Chairman.
We're not talking about anything in the future, but
Apologize for interrupting, but there is one little nuance that I think the board does need to discuss,
at least one of the roadways on that list that I provided to you of the people that called in is a privately maintained roadway. And so there's great hesitation on my part to send public works vehicles in to a privately maintained roadway, because if damage occurs to that road, and they come in and say, you broke the edges of our road, you tore up our right-of-way, removing the debris, then we're putting public works folks in on private property doing work. So I would like to hear a little bit of discussion, if you don't mind, about how you would like for us to address any of these piles of debris that are in a private subdivision or along a private roadway. And I thank you.
Commissioner Parker, if I might.
Yes, sir.
My suggestion would be we do it the same way as in a called emergency event. They get it to the public right away. Let them people know they need to move it to the public right away, and we're done with it. You know, if they can do that, we'll haul it off.
Commissioner Salter?
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was going to say. As long as it's on county right-of-way, we do not go on private property unless there's some kind of extenuating circumstances, which I don't know what might be, but get it to the county right-of-way.
Okay. And the streets you're talking about, that was the email that we got that had everything listed at request. And were there any streets on there on this? I didn't see any that said Bayside. I'm not even sure if maybe, Commissioner Parker, when you said Bayside the other day off my lot, were any of those addresses, did they make requests?
Yes, I know I've spoke with at least 3 of them on the phone, and that's what caused me to bring it forward. I, at the time, was not even aware of the ones down in Gulf Breeze and all. But yeah, I mean, again, this was I'm just asking for us to clean it up this one time, so.
Yep.
I guess I'll just recraft that real quick. I would make a motion without objection that we give Tony and whatever staff he deems necessary below him the authority to clean up the debris from the folks that have notified us on that list, with the caveat that they have to bring the debris to county right-of-way accessible by public road. And I make that without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved. I see, hope you don't mind me asking a few questions for clarifications, gentlemen. No, I haven't been serving on the board as long as some, so I just want to make sure that I understand it in case I get questions asked about it and know the direction we're going in. So I appreciate the help on that item. Now moving on to the meeting list. You have those dates for the first week in November, and we have a reorganization on November 9th, rapidly approaching. So I'm sure that our new chairman will be telling us about how he wants to handle the committee assignments and everything else. And I want to say that during my time serving as chairman, I really appreciate all the help and guidance that my fellow board members have given me and helping me not make too big of a fool of myself up here. I appreciate that. I would move approval of the meeting list as presented. Commissioner Parker, you have your light?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note, go on official record, that you are the best chairman I've ever served under. Don't know if there's been another one, but.
Are you saying you stand with Rob?
If I had my shirt, I'd be wearing it today. I've made multiple requests for the I Stand With Rob shirt, and.
There it is, my friend.
That's what I'm talking
I want to
about.
make sure that you're prepared.
It's gonna have to
that
be a
we
big one
have
to
a
fit.
shirt that says, "I stand with Rob," and we wanted to get this for Commissioner Parker.
Thank you.
That, now we know it's official.
That's gonna be a big one.
You didn't have too many
But I did want to notify.
I appreciate the support. That is something my team had made for me at home, and they thought that that would be a great addition for you. So it's good to know that you stand with Rob.
I wanted to notify the board on November the 9th, unless something changes, that I will not be able to attend that meeting.
So we can nominate so many different committee assignments for Commissioner Parker, who will not be attending at that meeting. Politics is a participation sport. We hope that you, that's a good-looking shirt right there, I gotta tell you.
Quick break after that.
Yes. All right. So we move approval of the meeting list without objection. Hearing no objection, the meeting list is approved. We will now take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:30 to finish the meeting. Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order, and we're on to the add-on, item number 4.
All right.
Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the board's leniency on this. This is a subject that we've broached on several times and even had the agency that involves here to tell us how to keep our garbage contained and how to rattle pots and pans and different things. The name of the agency is the Florida Wildlife Commission. Wildlife being the key word in that. Our county and all the counties do an outstanding job of domestic animals, dogs, cats, and it's a big burden on our citizens, but the burden of wildlife falls on our state government, and I feel like they've been less than active in taking care of the problem that continues to grow in Santa Rosa County, and I feel sure probably in Okaloosa and maybe other neighboring counties, and that's the growing population of wild bears, black bears in our state and especially in our county. And, you know, we've had complaints from citizens down on the Sound, or down on the peninsula. We've had complaints from citizens in East Milton. In fact, our own, one of our own employees has talked to me about a black bear that frequents her house because she lives down near Yellow River on 87 South. And I guess a lot of things don't quite hit you in the face as hard as when it just happens to you yourself. And when my wife told me that a black bear had been in our garage yesterday eating dog food, and I think about the conclusion that could have happened with if she'd run up behind that bear or my granddaughter had come in and walked up behind that bear, it doesn't set well with me. We've already had a bear shot on the south end. We've had other people have close encounters with a bear. I talked to a fellow the other day that heard a skirmish out in his yard, went out, walked around his car, and came face to face with a bear. And in tripping backwards, his pit bull dealt with the bear and probably saved him from getting mauled. I say all this to bring it to, to a conclusion that I feel like we need to take some action, letting the governor know, letting whoever's in charge of FWC know, that our legislative committee know that something has got to be done. Telling us that we got to put better locks on our trash cans, telling us that we have to go out and rattle pots and pans or put up better fences is not an answer. It's a Band-Aid on something that's getting worse and worse, and it's up to our state government to deal with it. And whether that be issuing permits for people to hunt the bear, doing a better job of capturing these bears and moving them to national forests, whatever. I'm not coming up with the answer because that's not my job. My job is to present this to our state government and emphasize the importance of it and hopefully get them to come up with an idea that's going to work, because it's only getting worse. These bears, as they continue to breed, are teaching the young bears, the cubs, you don't need to pick berries out in the woods. You don't need to go hungry. There's a nice place right down the road where we could eat dog food, or we can get in a trash can. And again, it's only getting worse, and I appreciate input from this board. I think we need to draft a letter emphasizing this to our state officials. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for bringing this item, and it is something that is definitely causing a lot of anxiety in the Navarre community, and I think areas around District 5 as well. It is something that we've talked about before, and I would definitely support your recommendation for that strong letter to our state partners. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say, I was actually at the ball field last week at a T-ball game in the afternoon, and it shocked me. One of the parents come up and that me and my wife know personally and said, "Hey, our neighbor just called and there's a bear in our garage right now over off of Woodbine Road and that Montrose subdivision. Big nice houses back there, right half mile from the brand new Publix," and I almost couldn't believe it. But anyway, I was just gonna say, I absolutely support it. I think this might be the coolest motion ever that we're getting towards this, pushing for our support to open, black bear season up again here in the Panhandle. I mean, for, I guess, a lottery system like alligators or something. So anything to do with hunting, I'm supporting that.
Okay, Vice Chairman Cole, would you like to direct staff toward your motion?
Make a motion that staff develop a letter, or county attorney develop a letter of strong wording that, we would like something more done than just directing us to put locks on our trash cans. And again, I don't have the answer, but that's not our job to do that. But if they don't start hearing from all the counties, I mean, that's the same thing that's going to continue to happen. And, how they handle that is up to them. I've told them that when they came here and did their presentation, that this is a Band-Aid on a major artery, so.
Would you be comfortable with just working with staff between now and the November meeting to where they could come back with that letter and we could approve it to make sure it's got the wording in there that sets the correct tone that we're looking for?
That'd be fine, yes.
Okay, great.
Do that without objection.
Hearing no objection, that direction to staff has been approved.
And we do have a public comment.
Oh, hi, yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please. Thank you, Rainer.
Wilbert Courtney, 4641 Geiger Road, Milton, Florida. I'd like to thank Commissioner Cole for bringing this up. I've been within 10 foot of that 400 to 600 pound bear. Didn't know where he was. Look up a tree and he's standing almost above me. Everybody says, "Oh, look at the cute bear." Why don't they come get this bear out of my yard and put it in theirs? They'll think how cute he is. I've had him, I called the Florida Wildlife Commission. Guy came out. He told me, he says, "Oh, just look big at him. Hold your hands up," all this. Let me tell you something. That bear can kill you in a second, and he can outrun you. It's not a joking matter. I have a shotgun, and if the bear comes in my yard, I will use it. And I was told I would be given a fine. And that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. They tell me, I called the Wildlife Commission, they tell me, "You moved in bear country." I've been there 35 years. I never saw a bear until 2 months ago. So how did I move into bear country? I don't know. They're ridiculous with their answers. They'll say, "Oh, we'll come out and look for him." I don't ever see anybody. I'm outside, never see anybody around. The bear that was probably at Commissioner Cole's house now just crossed the road day before yesterday at my neighbor's house right next door to me, holding his right paw up in the air. That means he's wounded. Do you think that bear's going to run from you? I don't think so. Florida Wildlife Commission says, well, they're going to have to do something because he's not afraid of humans anymore. He's out at 1:30 in the afternoon, which is the time it was the other day when he crossed the road there. And when this bear is out during the daylight, rumbling around, folks, he's going to hurt somebody or kill somebody. He's already attacked a dog over there the guy had to take to the vet and spend amount of money on, and the Wildlife Commission told him, well, the reason he attacked the dog was he didn't have a tree to go up. So I guess if he attacks a person, he didn't have a tree to go up, which is a ridiculous answer. And they keep telling, put your garbage cans up. Don't put anything in there. If I've got to do all they say, why don't we get rid of them, because it's a waste of money. If they're not going to do anything, we don't need them. And like Commissioner Parker said, open it up where everybody hunts bears. Everybody should have bear steaks. I'm tired of the bear being in my backyard. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your comments. I think a lot of citizens share your same concerns. So staff has the direction they need on this item. And now we'll move on to the add-on for Triumph and Commissioner Lynchard's request that we recommend approval of submitting letters of support to the Triumph Board for the following projects: School Board, Innovation High School, City of Milton Wastewater Treatment Plant relocation, City of Gulf Breeze, Eastgate, Andrews Institute, and Town Center projects. And recommend submission to the Triumph Board the pre-screening forms for the I-10 and Whitingfield Industrial Park projects. And I would move these items without objection. Hearing no objection, those items are moved. Thank you for bringing that forward, Commissioner Lynchard. And yes.
Could, little detail on the school board, what are we doing there?
The school board is a project for an innovation high school, a new high school, I believe it's Avalon Boulevard area. There's a proposed 40 acre site? Or, yeah.
Yes, 40 acres.
Yeah, 40 acre site that they have under contract. They have not yet acquired, but it would be a high school that would be geared towards STEM-related activities and basically would have the best of the best coming there, help increase workforce talent to where we can be more attractive to companies. I think that's the idea behind it. So
Did that item go through our committee? They've just asked that to be added?
yeah, part of the Triumph process, Jerry, is that we're supposed to entertain solicitations from the other municipalities or from any municipalities, and then the board. So school board, Jay, Gulf Breeze, Milton. Jay's project they're not quite done with yet, but that's when that's submitted, I'm sure we'll probably support that. And the project from the school board, this is their one and only project that they're bringing forward. And then Triumph asked that we look at the projects that would be submitted from our county and provide a letter of recommendation to support or not. And this is something that the board wanted to support as their only request. So that's kind of how we ended up here. There's no money committed for Santa Rosa County or anything like that yet.
Is that still the, and we hadn't had a discussion in a long time about it, Don Gates is on the Triumph?
He was added as a board member and is chairing a small subcommittee, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, he was recently appointed to that board.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yep, good questions. All right, so we now move on to the engineer's report, engineering services for Spencer Field traffic study. And I will defer to the district commissioner to afford you the opportunity to make the motion on this item if you so choose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry here, I was trying to pull the backup for that particular item to give you the correct motion here. I would just make a motion without objection that we go ahead and allow staff to negotiate with Genesis Engineering, who they had determined was the highest ranked engineer firm based on the submittals that they had received, to go ahead and move forward as we had previously authorized them to for the scope of work to study the entire Spencerfield corridor there along East and West Spencerfield Road to determine what alternative steps we could do next to help alleviate that traffic situation. Make that without objection.
No objection, just a point of clarification that the next step would be Roger or Tony to work with the selected firm to create deliverables and costs associated with those deliverables, and then it'll come back to us so we can narrow down the price a little bit more, right? Okay, great. So hearing no objections, that item is approved. Well done, Commissioner Parker. Item number 2 is a Chipper Lane add-on. Commissioner Parker, you're recognized.
This was added on at the request of a citizen. This is an issue we dealt with a few months ago as a board, or sometime over the last 6 months, to deal with a HMGP project that the board had been working on since prior to my election to address the repetitive flooding that's occurred there on Chipper and Maranatha Way area. I was contacted by the property owner that we had Mr. McClure that we had entered into an agreement with to purchase that property to be used for that grant funding. I was just made aware, actually Friday initially, and then yesterday is kind of definitively to say I wasn't aware that the grant funding has been postponed on that, or maybe not. I'm getting some head shake. I think at the end of the day, there's a lot of confusion here between the property owner, from what I'm being conveyed, and county staff, and he needs a definitive timeline. He's ready to submit a subdivision plan to the board, from what I understand, possibly in December, for this property to be developed, and he says he's just needs some clarification from us to set a definitive timeline so that he knows whether or not he's willing to follow through with the sale of this land. With that, I know Michael Smith, he told me, has been working with him on this. I don't know if anybody, I don't know if Mr. McClure wants to come speak, or Mr. Smith. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't bring y'all any backup. This is something I just met with him about yesterday.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Robert McClure, and I want to thank everybody for their opportunity to talk to you this morning. No, everything on this project has gone really smooth. Let me just tell you. I mean, between Roy and Michael and Roger and Steve Furman, I mean, they addressed the issue out there where the flooding was taking place. They approached me about the sale of the property. And there was a single issue here at the end, okay, that is really a major issue, but it's a single issue. And I think Michael can address it, but I think that in the discussions that we've had in the last 5 minutes, it's been resolved, you know, and I think satisfactorily for everyone, okay? And I mean, it's going to be something that we'll have to discuss to make sure that it's exactly what we need, you know? And the problem is that I'm going to have a development that's sitting there, okay? And as you all know, some of you are in business, some of you have done real estate, you all know about the flooding issues out off Maranatha, okay? You know, hopefully everything's resolved, and I'll let Michael just kind of address the situation with you the way he feels necessary.
Good morning. Little background, you know, this HMGP came about because of the repetitive flooding there in Chipper, Maranatha. You know, we had a BDI came on board, did the design. The original concept was actually to put a pond on another piece of property, and that fell through the due diligence with legal and staff, through the review process. It was a parcel that we couldn't use. It was a park parcel, I believe. So we approached Mr. McClure. What makes this such a one-off is, and we've done public-private partnerships before with ponds, this being a grant, I just can't direct or ask staff or you know, talk to Stephen and ask them, you know, hey, we need to dig a hole. It's kind of a much simpler process. This being a grant, you got to be very careful in how you do things. And therein lies the issue. You know, Mr. McClure is moving forward quickly with his development, and through nobody's fault or anybody's fault. You know, this grant has just kind of been, I don't want to say delayed. I mean, there's been hurricanes, there's been some issues with FEMA that have just delayed the project. So where we're at now is, you know, FEMA, we have a permit to do a FEMA HMGP grant pond. It's going to fix not only the problem in the Chipper Maranatha area, but it's also going to piggyback onto Mr. McClure's piece. And it's going to take some, not all, but some of his stormwater. Since he's a bit ahead of us, Stephen and I have worked out kind of a workaround, but again, just trying to, so everybody knows where we're at, you know, he's ahead of us. And we just need, and I think we've come to an agreement or some type of understanding of how we can do that. I know Mr. McClure wants to remove some of the dirt and mine some of the dirt for his road base. Again, being a grant, that I think we're okay there, Sheila, as long as it's done prior to, maybe.
If we're simply talking removal of dirt, I don't see that that would impact the grant in any way. Is that the question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Beyond that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Vice Chairman Cole, you recognize.
Was removal of the dirt for Mr. McClure's usage in the subdivision part of the original contract? When we
It was
bought
part of the original, when he came to us, that was part of the original, I don't want to say stipulation, but that's something that he wanted as part of the original. I'm selling you this piece, can I at least maybe mine? Maybe not, maybe none of that dirt's any good. We don't know yet. I think he said he's found a little bit that he could use. But yes, that was part of the original contract.
Verify that?
I don't remember seeing that in the backup. I mean, I believe you if you say it was in there, but was that part of the agreement that we
It's
previously
not,
agreed to?
there's not a provision in the contract that says that. The understanding was that that would take place probably prior to the county acquiring the property, therefore it'd be his dirt.
Sure.
Now, I mean, there's nothing, the original contract term expired because of the inherent delays in the grant
So
process.
at this point, it's
And
still Mr. McClure's property.
it's still Mr. McClure's property, and we have, the board has agreed to a 60-day extension, which would put us through December, but Mr. McClure has not executed or agreed to that extension at this point, which is the reason for the discussion today.
Well, then, just my suggestion is, if it's still his dirt, he needs to get his dirt before we conclude a contract.
Okay.
Or else, just plain simple.
Yeah, that would be my only concern. I mean, it's your dirt. You can, as long as it's allowable to do so. I mean, is this what we would normally do, Michael? I mean, if in other situations like this, what do we normally do with the dirt? I mean, we're not in the dirt selling business. I imagine is this pretty, am I safe in assuming that this is pretty standard?
It's pretty standard, and, we could use the dirt at the landfill. We use the dirt in any number of projects. Sometimes Road and Bridge needs the dirt, sometimes we use it at the landfill. But if it's, Mr. McClure's going to remove the dirt prior to the sale, then.
I mean, I don't know how much dirt we're talking about here, but obviously that's
It is a significant amount of dirt, and any dirt that the property that the county owns, the contract in the HMGP will have a provision to send that to the landfill. Because the one thing the landfill always needs is daily cover.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Commissioner Cole. We weren't talking about, were we talking about we were going to do the dirt work too? Like we're going to dig it and put it on site for Mr. McClure? Was that part of the deal or?
No.
Okay. Well, then I agree with Vice Chairman Cole unless I'm missing something
I've got one
here.
other question with regard to what you've said there. The fact that we never discussed prior to the execution of the contract or after the execution of the contract, only that I would be able to excavate the road-based material. Now, again, if it was there, and which we didn't know, I mean, we've got soil samples, needless to say, that BD&E, I believe, did. Is that right, Roy?
I think Baskerville Donovan has done the geotechnical work on the property, yes.
Right, and it's extensive, but even from that, you really can't tell concerning the base material because when we dug there, it appears that the bulk of the base material that we've found so far is at the 15-foot level. Well, for the cost of excavation to go to 15 foot, I mean, it's really not something that's feasible. But there are other areas that I've looked at out there, in other words, where your pond is now in Chipper Lane, and looking at the base material that's there, it looks like it could be at a higher level. My one comment would be to you this, okay, with regard to the contract and the excavation of the dirt. Whatever dirt came out of there, and again, this would be back in Sheila's court because I don't know, but would the HMPG funding be diminished in any way or damaged in any way if prior to the funding coming through, we had someone in there and removed the dirt at no cost to the county and maybe help do a joint effort here? And I'm not saying that I want that to be that you're looking at me and dependent on me, but I will certainly work with the county. And I've identified people that have said with the construction where it's at now, where they're hauling dirt from, that that would not be a problem to sell all the dirt we wanted from that area right through, okay? I've identified a person that said he would put an excavator in there, load the dirt, and has given a price to the people that he's contacted. That would be that much less cost to the county down the road, and it's something to think about. I mean, and again, Sheila could tell you if it's would do any damage as far as the HMPG funding is concerned.
The county does not own the property at this point. If we're talking, this would be work that would be done before the county took ownership of the property. I do not see any problems with the grant. If we're talking about activities to occur after the property is under the ownership of the county, I would have to research this further.
It would have to be what, Sheila?
I would have to research further and get a definitive answer.
Okay. Is there a decision that we're going to be making today anyway, or is this?
No, I don't see any need for a decision today. I mean, just as long as we're in agreement that if I can find the material to excavate for the base material and I can find it at a depth that's usable, either before or after the execution of the contract, that I could take it, because, I mean, it's going to be insignificant anyway for the base material. And I don't know that it's there, but I'm just asking that even if it is there as a part of this, okay? And I know you've all been through this, but, you know, you're taking the 5 acres, but also in addition to that, you know, I've done, as a part of this proposal, if it goes through, okay, and if it does, I've also donated a lot there on Chipper Lane, and if y'all looked at the map on Chipper Lane, you've got 2 lots there that are actually a holding pond for the county there now, okay? And I've got pictures after every storm for the last year, basically, out there showing you the water and the retention and so forth, but you've got 2 ponds there. I donated the lot just south of those 2 ponds. They're 1 pond, but it's 2 lots, okay? As a part of this proposal, I've offered to donate that lot. Also, I kept a 70-foot right-of-way coming in there, okay, that was south of the pond that we didn't need if you're going to fulfill this thing. So, in other words, there's 50 foot there that runs almost 500 feet, 450 feet, I think, or 500 feet, that is going to be adding to the area of the pond, okay? So in other words, this is going to allow you to not just expand, put a pond on the area that you're purchasing, but also expand it on the area of the land that I'm donating to you. So just food for thought for you, but I'd like to know that, you know, I'm probably looking at 6 months. If we go with the proposal as it is right now, with the development and get a development order in place December the 7th, which is what my engineer is telling me we can do, at the outside, we're looking at a 6 months completion time, okay? And I just need an assurance that at that point in time, that the questions that I've asked of Michael and of Sam and of Roy, that those issues are resolved. And I think with with what he's told me this morning, that we can sit down and those issues can be resolved. And the other question for you is, I mean, Sheila's answered the question with regard to the removal of the dirt. But I mean, if you're going to let a contract on this thing to remove dirt, and there could be 300 or 400 loads a day going out of that thing for 3 or 4 months before the FEMA money comes through, I mean, obviously that could be a big difference in cost. And something that y'all could work out. I mean, I can give you the names of the people. It'd be something that y'all could decide if you wanted to do.
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman Cole, then Commissioner Parker.
Go ahead.
It's just getting too convoluted for me. I know there's been property donated, there's property here or there. Sheila, can I ask you just something? I guess I don't have it answered. We're buying this property for a holding pond with FEMA dollars.
Correct.
So you do or do not, or do you have to research it more, whether if Mr. McClure goes ahead and digs dirt out of it now, before we buy it, would that, in your mind, does that affect FEMA saying, well, no, we're not buying it now because it's a hole in the ground, it's not vacant 5 acres, or is that what you're telling me you still have to research?
We do not own the property right now. If
Yes.
the current owner were to dig a hole in that property, FEMA is not concerned with that.
Okay.
And
What was
a
it
second
you had to
note,
research?
the last board action where they agreed to extend the contract with Mr. McClure to purchase for $150,000 was a 60-day extension, meaning that the closing would need to occur before December 1. We will not have grant funds before December 1. So it is unlikely, in my opinion, that we will actually get reimbursement under the grant for the land purchase, which was part of the backup at the last meeting. We do have a waiver request in right now asking for their consideration to reimburse us after the fact for that. Even though if at the end of the day FEMA still does not reimburse us for that land purchase, because it is part of the entire project, we really don't want to do anything to jeopardize that money. And so if the county owns that land and we go disturb the ground before the project starts, that is what I'm concerned with.
Okay. All right, so your concern is after we purchase it, but
Let me resolve.
prior to getting the grant money. So if we purchase it out of pocket, start digging it, you think that affects our possibility of getting the grant paid back after the fact?
Bob, let me just address that. If there's any way that it's going to jeopardize anything there, I'll get the dirt somewhere else. Fair
Well,
enough?
That's my concern.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, but if you find out, I would ask that if you find out that it can be utilized on site, that you would grant me permission to do it. And if not, if it disturbs anything or in any way jeopardizes anything that you're doing to help those folks down the road there, okay, that are flooding and have been for years and years, I mean, don't worry about it.
I know we need the pond, I know that's right, but like you say, I don't want to jeopardize it.
No, and that's
my
not
only
in any of our interest to want to do
My only
that.
comment to conclude this was that if, after we buy it, I don't see how, as a county board of commissioners, we can give you permission to dig dirt off of it.
That's fine.
Short of anybody else in the county saying, hey, I want to go in your pit and dig dirt. So,
It was just a part of the original agreement that I would be able to get the base material if it was needed, and it was never discussed prior to or after the purchase, and truthfully, it didn't cross my mind, and I don't know that it crossed anybody's mind that this would be a question, but that's not a problem,
okay.
okay?
And I'm
Just so you know, that's not even an issue.
Commissioner Parker, then Commissioner Salter.
Just last point of clarification through Mr. Chairman to Sheila is we're glad we get to see you so much today. Do we have to, what is our deadline as far as the funding from the FEMA grant concerned with when the purchase of the property has to take place?
Well, let me just start with giving you guys the most current update on this project. So of the 4 that were submitted after the April 14 event, only one of the 4 has made it through all the approvals, and we have a grant award, and that's the Pace Patterson. In fact, we have a bid award that we'll be bringing to you at the next meeting. The other 3, which include Chipper Maranatha and the 2 in the South End, were still under the Environmental Historic Preservation Review at the FEMA level when the Hurricane Harvey and Irma hit. And so for about a month, they actually had what they call a temporary freeze on all funding to deal with immediate needs. That's actually been lifted, but the 3 projects themselves are still at FEMA. They're technically under review. We've been told that they are scheduled to be out of that review by the end of this month, so in a few days. So hopefully next week I'll have a better idea of when we're going to get that grant agreement. Given my experience, the timeline that I feel pretty comfortable with right now is that we could potentially have that grant agreement December or January and then have that fully executed. At the point when a grant agreement is fully executed, meaning that the county has inked it and the state has inked it, that's our official period of performance. So at that point is when you would typically purchase a property, and that would ensure full reimbursement. Because Mr. McClure was, a motivated seller and interested in moving this forward quickly, he was only willing to agree to selling the property if we did so quicker than what the grant would allow. And so that's why we're sort of in this situation now. We do not want to do anything related to construction until after that grant agreement is executed. So that's why I feel like if the pond property is impacted prior to the county owning it, I have no concerns with that. But I feel like after the county takes ownership, if we were to touch that property, FEMA would consider that activity before the period of performance begins. Does that clarify?
Yeah, so basically December, best case scenario that we buy, but we don't have to purchase the property prior to the grant.
If the owner requires.
Well,
or-
per funding.
No.
Okay, and Roy, when is it set right now, or tentatively, I guess, what has been proposed to him for
The
a closing date?
The timeline is, at this point, has been dictated by Mr. McClure, and the board in September approved an extension of the contract, which had technically expired through December. And that's the extension that the board approved and Mr. McClure has not agreed to. We're, if he wants, the December date is Mr. McClure's date, ultimately.
I guess my synopsis is, and I may be wrong on this, but it's ultimately, it sounds like today, that it really is totally on you to whether we go ahead and consummate the closing, and then it sounds like the land be undisturbed, or you start excavating and then we look at a closing date later down the road. But as far as the issue of the excavation or mining of the dirt, but maybe clear as mud, that's kind of what I look at it.
Yeah, and
Rather than convoluting it, I think the thing that I would say to you is that the contract needs to be executed. But along with the execution of the contract, the things that I discussed with you yesterday and that I said that you've looked at, okay, are the things that I need to have assurance of. And the primary thing is the area to the west that you're purchasing, that we have got a guarantee that April the 1st, when we go to ask for a final on the subdivision, okay, that we've got an area that the water is going to go to, okay? And the county, you know, I know everything before was predicated on the HMPG grant and all, but, and that may be in by then, but to move forward with this thing from a business standpoint, I need to know that we're moving forward with that. I think it's worked out. Let's just leave it and see what staff does with it and how they arrive at a conclusion as to how this is going to be resolved. But as far as the closing is concerned, once that issue is resolved, we need to be prepared to go to closing on the property. Okay?
So we have an extension for 60 days under the same terms?
No, I did not ink that.
I understand. That's
Yeah,
why
no. No.
So we don't have an extension.
You've got where we've discussed, but I've also discussed the primary issues with regard to what had to happen in order for that to be executed. Okay? And that's the issues that I'm sure Michael is aware of and that we've discussed, and we'll just move, and staff will move forward with it, the appropriate people that need to make the decision.
I think you're looking at the appropriate people that would need to make the decision. I just don't even know what the heck the decision would be today. And here's what I'm going to recommend is that we have this item come before us in November, and between now and then, we figure out exactly what the request would be and have everything lined up. I'm certainly not prepared to make any decision today, and I don't know that staff is necessarily comfortable making this decision. Some things have come to light today that seem interesting to me. I don't know that they would have made a difference ultimately, but you know, we paid a significant amount for the property above what it was appraised for, I believe, and then it was less than that. It was okay. I must be thinking about another one, but the dirt, if that's what we usually do, just now I'm hearing that that might not be what we usually do, and that it might mess up the grant. And so I just want to make sure that I fully understand what staff would be empowered to do as it relates to the acquisition of this piece of property. I know what the board has approved to this point, but I don't know, you know, that staff has the ability to change what has been decided by the board.
Rob, I think I fully answered your question when I said that, when Sheila indicated that the grant could be impacted, okay, if we remove dirt after the purchase, that she would need to check on that. And what I
Understand that.
do what?
I understand that.
Okay, and I said that we would not have to remove dirt if it would impact the grant. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think
And pretty
Commissioner
clear?
Parker has hit the nail on the head that if, you still own the property right now, so as long as there's no code enforcement issue or any variance that has to be issued or anything like that, if it's an allowable use to start extracting the dirt out, and basically, you know what I mean, with the understanding that we're going to put a retention pond in there, that's the only other thing that comes to mind, to where he can take care of the dirt issue before we close on it. That way it won't impact our grant. That's the only thing that, is that a concern at all?
Well, I think again, the issue at hand is really our closing right now. If Robert is either going to sign an extension or not for closing at December. And it seems we would need to know that.
Mr. Chairman, if you will, just so, we probably have gotten lost through several issues.
Yeah.
I just want to bring back the reason I put this on the agenda today without any notice or backup was, from what I was conveyed yesterday with speaking to Mr. McClure, was he was not prepared to sign the extension unless he had some guarantee of what our action was consummate to the pond, based on he's going to bring a development order or a request for us to plat a subdivision. And, he said, hey, if the county doesn't go ahead and dig the pond and I don't have somewhere to put the water, is the county going to approve the subdivision? And my comment was, I can't see myself or anybody approving a platted subdivision until we have a guarantee that the water is going to go to a location. So then the concern became, if the county buys the property, but we don't start digging the pond, and the builder gets to the point where he's got to build this house, and on the design it shows going to our pond, and we haven't dug the pond, well, then I told him there's no way in good conscience I could support that. And so that's when he said, well, and I don't think any of you will. I mean, how do we look at a homeowner and say that floods downstream? I think it's just negligent. So then he said, I'm not signing this extension unless I have a guarantee that, I think the date he used either was April or May, that the county moves forward with digging this pond. And so I brought it forward not so much for Mr. McClure's development, but just from what I've been told, that I say we as the county, I believe prior to even me being on this board, approached him to buy it to alleviate some of the flooding on Chipper and Maranatha, based on the fact that I didn't want what I'm being told on Wednesday, the day before the meeting. I didn't want to not bring that to the board and then him decide, well, you know what, I'm not going to sell the property and I'm just going to develop it and build a smaller pond elsewhere on the property to make more money. And then now the people on Chipper and Maranatha miss out on a chance for flooding alleviation. And that's why I brought it forward today, because I was being told yesterday that basically he needed an immediate definitive decision, or there was a chance that this process through all this HMGP work may be for naught.
And if we don't do the pond, then the development's not going to go forward either. So I guess what I don't understand is, what's the rush? The county doesn't want to be, or I don't want to be on the hook for a pond until we know that we're going to have, I believe it's 75% reimbursement for that pond from the federal government. So if that delays the development, then, if it doesn't delay the development and you're able to meet all of those requirements to do the development without the pond, then I guess, I want to make sure that we can provide relief, and it looks like staff has found a way to provide relief, but we have no control over what the federal government's going to do, and that's a big risk in my mind, to put ourselves out there to be on the hook for, if the federal government says that they're not going to award those funds, no matter how likely we think it would be. I don't know why we can't, go another month or two and see if the federal government you're thinking it's going to be December or January that we would have a decision. So we're talking about extending things another 30 days? So if you can't work with us to do another 30 days, we paid fair market value. It seems like we paid for the soil testing that would need to be done. Now we're talking about the dirt that, you get the base material. That's the best dirt there is, that stuff that's at the top there. I mean, it seems like we're working with you and staff's trying to work with any way we can. We need another 30 days to see if the federal government is going to provide us the 75% match. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. So if you're willing to give us the 30 days, then we can come back at the November meeting, and if we have to give you some assurances and change that date, we can do that. But if you can't do that, I'm going to have a difficult time providing support for that today, because I feel like I've got a gun to my head right now that you got to make a decision right now. We just put this on the agenda today, and we got to know, or that's, I hope I'm, okay, good. To me, it seems like we get 30 days and we're good.
You're not putting anything for a vote today, are you? I mean, it was just
Well,
for information.
Again, I brought it forward based on Mr. McClure yesterday stating that he needs confirmation from the board, or, again, and definitely not trying to misinterpret, but I believe he said he felt that he was getting possible mixed things from different staff members, or maybe not assurance, and not assurance. And so when he comes to me and says, hey, if I'm not going to sign the extension, I'm looking at the welfare of the folks on Chipper and Maranatha is my concern. Now, he said today that he feels like staff's got it worked out. So that's fine. But that was what created the immediacy to me. And, you know, I guess to go back and sort of his concern he expressed yesterday was in direct sort of opposition to the thought, I'll say, that the chairman just put out, which was that if he doesn't have assurance that we're going to do this pond in a timely manner, and his engineer, Paul McLeod, met us out at the site as well, said, hey, look, we don't need that much pond. We can just do the pond actually a little bit further over. And I mean, I saw with my own eyes the property naturally does slope to a little bit different location. And his engineer said, look, we can do a much smaller pond. He can have a net gain of roughly 18 lots minus the road costs and construction costs. And based on what Mr. McLuhan, the engineer, said, his net profit would go up $300,000 to $350,000 more by not selling it to the county. Now, I can't say if that's true or not, but I can go off of saying that that's what I was told yesterday. And so that was why ultimately, I don't know, Mr. McClure said a moment ago he's satisfied, so I guess it's a moot point at this moment. But
Let me help
Vice
you.
Chairman Cole? If there's no action.
We've got an agreement with Mr. McClure. We've already gone through all this price. We bought it at an appraised value. How many people, if he doesn't build a subdivision, how many people are we keeping from flooding? Mike, can you answer that?
32, repeat.
27 homes,
And how much is the property?
150.
$150,000
Okay,
for
then
the property
let's
and the
just
donation.
cut this out. Execute the contract, pay the man for his land, let's save these homes from flooding, and if we get our money back from the feds, and you can't have no dirt off our property once we buy it. Got that? And doesn't that make it a whole lot simpler and be done with this thing?
If somebody wants to say it, that'd be great, but that's not what we've said to this point. So,
well, then-
we're still talking about we have an agreement. I'm looking for assurances where I can have the dirt and we can work stuff
No,
out.
we're not
so-
going there. I'm gonna make a motion that we continue with the original contract with Mr. McClure, pay him. We don't give you no dirt, we don't give anybody in the county no dirt, it's now our dirt, and Sheila, you continue to try to get our money back from the feds. If we do, we do, if we don't, we don't, but for $150,000, we've protected all these homes and all these citizens that are currently here,
Works for me.
whether he builds a subdivision or not, and let's get done with this thing.
I've been waiting for Commissioner.
And I make that a
Salter.
motion without objection.
I don't have an objection, but we'll move to discussion real quick. Commissioner Salter, you've been waiting for a while.
I'm not sure if I understand Commissioner Cole's objection, but what I did hear Sheila say, that FEMA has no problem with Mr. McClure removing the dirt prior to a sale. FEMA has no problem with that. Okay. I'd like to see us go ahead and if Mr. McClure wants to remove the dirt, that's fine with me, as long as it doesn't impact the grant. However, if the grant doesn't go through, if it fails, now I agree with Commissioner Cole. For $150,000, we can protect those homes from flooding. So one way or the other, I'd like to see us move forward, either first choice federal, second choice taking care of those homes.
Well,
Thank
keep in
you.
mind the 150,000, I'm sure you know, is just for the land cost. That's not for the project. The 70, what's the total project? Like is it more than $1 million or?
1.1 or 2 million.
1.2 million. So right now we're on the hook for, I don't know, 300,000 or something like that. You know, that's, $900,000 difference. So we'd have the property to do a pond, I guess, in-house if we wanted to. We just wouldn't have the matching.
Can I just clarify a couple things?
Please.
Don't want to confuse anybody anymore, but the action that the board took in September to extend the contract with Mr. McClure for 60 days, the information that was provided to the commission included the fact that should the closing occur before the grant was awarded, that $150,000 would be on us. That was part of the agenda backup, and in fact, $150,000 has already been moved from the electric franchise fee reserves for the purchase of this property. So the question, I guess, to you today is not so much a concern regarding reimbursement, because in my mind, that decision was made in September. And if you want to go back to the minutes or the meeting materials, I understand that, but we put forward that information as part of the September backup. I think, if I'm understanding Mr. McClure correctly, is he wants some assurances from the county that he will be able to continue moving forward with his subdivision with some assurance of having that pond there at some point. And as you all know, FEMA is moving at their own pace, and while I feel pretty confident based on the history that I have working on these grants that yes, they will approve the money, and yes, I expect it could be as early as December, I can't guarantee that. And if I can answer any more questions, I will, but I'm hoping that maybe clarifies some information. We do not have an agreement with Mr. McClure at this point. The one that we had in place expired on October 1, so we do not have an existing agreement to purchase Mr. McClure's property. And he is not willing to sign that 60-day extension unless he has some assurances, and I believe that's what the concern
And the assurance that
is.
specifically we're asking for, because I've heard a lot of things except for this, is the assurance that specifically asking is that we would build that retention pond with or without federal money. Is that the assurance that we're looking for? Is that right?
That is not correct, Commissioner. What the assurance, and Robert, correct me, he can proceed with his development with the ability to take that little bit of stormwater that was coming to the retention pond and go to the existing pond. That was what I understood the agreement to be. Do I see two nods?
Well. See, and again, as he comes back, Mr. Chairman, the only reason I brought this forward wasn't that we needed to do anything, because even Roy had told me, hey, we put the, like Sheila said, the offer, that's why I asked it to put on here, because it's, the ball's on his court.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, if we don't
Let me
need to
just-
do anything, then I guess we've heard the discussion
Yeah.
that we needed
I'm
to hear.
assuming, I'm assuming from what I've heard that you've agreed to the fact that somebody has got the permission to move forward with the purchase and the closing if we reach agreement on the other issue, okay? And what's shown right now in the drawing, Roger, is that we've got a drainage area going to a retention area, and the main thing that I need assurance of is that when we finish the subdivision, that we're going to get that we're going to be able to finalize and move forward with it, okay? And we've got a place to put the water, and that's it. And I think, am I incorrect in understanding that, Michael, and you feel you can handle this?
Yes, we'll handle it in the review of your construction plans that haven't even been submitted yet.
Correct. And
We can't we're not going to pre-approve
No.
something
No.
ahead of time.
I think Roger understands what I'm saying with regard to the property to the west, okay? But anyway, everything's fine.
Right now,
Yeah.
There's no action for the board to take. We know that there's no agreement in place right now, and.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my motion.
I don't want Mr. McClure leaving here thinking that some new assurances have been given that that we're not given. We don't have an agreement right now, and if you want to sign the 60-day, sign the 60-day. If, that's where we are right now. So I think Sam put it best, the ball's in your court. If you need some other action to the board to take, then we can do an agenda item and bring that back up and discuss it. Other than that,
I mean, did I hear you say, though, that you've approved the money and you're ready for closing at this point?
The money is ready for
We
closing.
did that
now.
under the existing contract, yeah, that's what we've been asking you to.
And that's exactly, and as soon as we finalize the discussions that we've had today with regard to the water, okay, I'm ready, and I'm assuming at that point we're ready to go to closing.
The contract that we have is the contract we have. The other issues in regard to the engineering and that sort of stuff are going to be staff-based in accordance with our requirements. It's not something that this board has to take any action in regard to if it meets our requirements at the date that you submit those subdivision plans, which you have not done. So
Okay. If we'll discuss it, okay, and I think Michael and I have discussed it this morning, and we'll let you know, okay? Is that fair enough?
Okay. All right. Public forum. Any members of the public wish to address the board?
Thank you. I truly enjoyed all that. That was fun. There was a mention of the storage facility earlier today. I'll be the historian again. Has the Arts Committee ever done anything with the building that we gave to them for $15 a year?
Tony?
You're talking about the Whittle Building? The Whittle Building is, they're supposed to have all their stuff out, and we've just got to, this board's already approved the disposition of that building. We'll be selling that building.
Do you now retain control of that building?
Yes.
Because you granted them a 25-year lease. You have control of it now?
Yes.
And it's going to be sold? Okay.
Yes.
Very good. I'm impressed.
Let the
Mr.
record
Andrews.
show that Mr. Cooey was impressed.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I didn't agree with that decision at the time, so thank you for getting the property back that rightfully belonged to all the citizens. Mr. Andrews, on public records request, I wasn't aware of it, so if you could help me understand, request was made, we receive an email from your person. There seems to be a built-in time frame on when you can look at that documentation. Can you explain that to me?
No, there's no specific time. Depends on what the request is and the staff time that's reasonably required to respond to it.
No, that's not what I mean. A request was made, the information is gathered, apparently it was available electronically. I get an email from your office that says, okay, here's your request. It times out. If you don't look at that information in a certain period of time, it's timing out. And we had to call back, and that was the portion I was.
Well, actually, I don't know how IT does that stuff. So,
Okay.
I can put you in touch with the people who do it. But yeah, we put it to a file transfer deal, and you can pick it up, and those things, I guess, expire after a while. I don't know.
Well, I think they're expiring pretty quick, like less than a week and a half, maybe. So if you could,
It doesn't sound very quick to me, actually. But, we can repost it for you if you make another request.
Well, and that's been handled. I don't understand. You're putting it to a file server so we can go look at it. And I don't understand why there's a time frame put in there to start out with. A public record is a public record. I'm just saying, if it's being set at 2 weeks now, if you could expand that, I can live with that. But I know I received the email on the records that I requested. I was busy, I was out of town, I didn't have a chance to look at it. When I did look at it, which was only a few days after I'd received the email, it was already locked out, couldn't go to it. So, if you could look at that. One additional thing, I mentioned it about 3 months ago, and I never got any kind of a feedback or anything, so I'll make my official request here today. I need to take a look at any loans that have been made by the Tourist Development Council, any loans of TDC money that's been loaned to other organizations. If you could make that available to me, I'd like to take a look at it. Thank you.
If we have such documents, we'll find them.
All right, thank you. Any additional items to come before this board? Hearing none, we are adjourned.